Good morning and welcome to our webinar. Please note that during our webinar we will be using audio broadcast. The small box in the right-hand corner will need to remain open throughout. To chat to the host, click on the speech bubble in the top right-hand corner and then type it in the text box. If you'd like to submit a question, click on the question mark in the top right-hand corner and open the Q&A box. If you experience technical difficulties, please email ibsmarketing@capita.co.uk or speak to us directly through the chat bar. I'll now pass over to our presenter for today, Tiernan Quinn.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Tiernan Quinn and I head up the Custom Solutions Sales and Innovation team here in Ireland. For the past 20 years, I've worked with clients large and small in both public and private sectors to identify suboptimal processes, information scarcity, and manually inefficient processes, and have helped them to define new ways of working that leverage technology and capitalize on the connectivity that's available today to link shareholders digitally. Before I begin, I just want to provide you with a short introduction as to who we are. Capita IB Solutions are a wholly owned subsidiary of Capita plc within the Digital Software Solutions division, having been acquired in 2010. However, we have nearly 40 years of experience in delivering packaged applications and in the design, development, and support of complex solutions that address unique business challenges. We have more than 200 staff across a network of offices here in Ireland and in the UK, with more than 150 people involved in solution development, consultancy, managed services, and client support. We assist some of the largest organisations across the UK and Ireland and are proud of our impressive track record in leading transformational change through innovative software solutions. The title of today's presentation is P2P Transformation in the Digital Age, but I would like to start a long before then with an Irish entrepreneur and innovator from the 1950s. Ben Dunn Sr. had worked with Rocha Stores, a family-owned drapery business in the 1950s, as a buyer, and when asked to take on additional responsibilities without a requested pay increase, he decided to strike out on his own. He opened his first store on Patrick Street in Cork, called it Dunn Stores, highlighting better value, the catchphrase which is still used by the chain today. In the late 1950s, they began selling groceries. This self-service approach was revolutionary and was the start of the evolution of supermarkets here in Ireland. Later in life, when he was being interviewed about his success as a retailer, he would claim that he never made any money selling items in his stores, but that the secret to his success was built on how he bought stock. So while I know that not everyone on today's call is commercially focused, all organisations have requirements to source and buy items and services to support their ongoing activities, and today I'm going to outline how your organisation can become more efficient and ultimately save money while spending money. So let's first look at where the savings can be made. In a very simplistic view, this is just about buying only what is required in the most efficient way. It's about control over spending, automating processes, reducing errors, and providing the business with effective management and controls over the end-to-end procurement cycle. However, this is perhaps a rather simplistic view. And while these activities are important, and I will come back to them later, at the heart of a fully optimized, efficient, and effective supply chain management process is data. And if one is to be strategic about transforming your supply chain, consideration needs to be given to two particular data sets. It will be our view that it's all about being able to access and utilize good data. This will help us understand, one, what it is we're likely to require, and two, who it is we might like to consider to buy it from. Later, we will look into tactical considerations as to how we're going to buy those items, and finally, we will examine what changes can be made in relation to your transactional activities that can yield some real business benefits. It's very hard to effectively control spending and gain efficiencies if you don't understand what you're buying and from whom. In many organizations, much of this information can be readily extracted from your ERP or finance systems, but in larger, more complex multi-site organizations, gaining this insight can be difficult to process, involving consolidation of information and cleansing of data across multiple systems and geographies in order to gain the insights required to gain a universal view. It's sometimes not just about how many widgets we buy and at what price and from what organization, but one also needs to look at other considerations, such as price variances, contract terms, discounts available, and factors that are sometimes non-structured in nature and can be a good deal more difficult to manage. We'll come back to speak about some of these in a few moments when we talk about vendor scorecards. To assist with spend analytics, large concerns use category analysis. This will help to determine if you're buying items that are similar products from different or too many suppliers. If we can define supercategories, categories, and subcategories, and then encode all spend transactions according to the predefined categories, analysis will show spend leakage or average spend issues that may be impacting your particular organization. Item analysis poses the same question in terms of, are we buying the same items from multiple vendors, perhaps using different business units or in different geographies, and are we being charged the same or different pricing? Like the above, analysis of this data can sometimes readily identify where we're purchasing from non-preferred vendors or via suboptimum contracts. Fact-based spend data can arm procurement managers with the information required to spot trends, improve performance, inform policies, and implement fact-based decision-making to transform supplier performance. Where required, sophisticated forecasting and predictive analytics software can also be deployed to assess likely future requirements. This will help plan and manage supply chains and can be used to examine the effects of cost drivers to anticipate future purchase pricing. Knowing how much you spend on widgets and with whom, as outlined above, only tells part of the story. A vendor who provides the cheapest product but who is a variable quality and misses agreed delivery dates is probably not an organization that you may wish to continue to do business with. The adoption of proactive supplier relationship management is about strategically planning for and managing all interactions with third-party companies that supply goods or services to an organization in order to maximize the value of those interactions for both parties. In practice, supplier relationship management entails creating closer, more collaborative relationships with key suppliers in order to uncover and realize new value and reduce the risk of failure. Collecting and analyzing data from across organizations is critical to effectively manage suppliers and identify both the best and the worst performance. Information can be from multiple sources, including non-conformance reports, delivery trackers, customer complaints, but if it's not measured, it can't be managed. So a correct process needs to be put in place to collect this data. A supplier scorecard is an essential tool if you wish to track performance in various dimensions. And in order to get the most value from your contracts, you need a method whereby you can measure performance relative to other suppliers. You need to decide on what's important for your business, but it's likely to include both qualitative details that can be derived from your ERP platform and more subjective scores such as time to respond to a request or the level of innovation delivered. How much value you gain from your supplier and contract is dependent on whether you engage with them at a technical or a strategic partnership level. To retain a partnership approach takes time and effort, so we need to accept that not all suppliers are equal, and in order to focus on the relationships that are critical to your organization, we need ways to identify those suppliers that are likely to be important. Peter Kracklick, a consultant with McKinsey, introduced the Kracklick matrix in an article in the Harvard Business Review in 1983. This starts by classifying all the commodities, components, products and services that you buy according to, on one hand, supply risk on one axis and the potential financial impact on the other. A supplier that represents a potential high financial impact and a supply risk is likely to be considered to be strategic to your business and one that would warrant a very close partnership. Organizations where the financial risk is not so high, but an interruption to supply would represent a risk, would also warrant ongoing close cooperation. For items that have a significant financial impact, but where there is a minimal supply risk, you may wish to consider competitive tendering to reduce costs, whereas non-critical, no-impact, low-risk items are just bought on the spot using pure cost considerations. With this understanding, we can ensure we start engaging with the right suppliers who, depending on their importance and spend, could require strategic partnership or just tactical suppliers who are based on lowest cost. No standard measurement approach exists across industries, although supply chain organizations should strive internally for some consistency, particularly with respect to technical aspects of their systems. The challenge today is to develop a measurement process and scorecard system that offers some flexibilities to a company's internal operations while maintaining company-wide consistency. There are a whole host of things that one could measure when one looks at a supplier scorecard, and today we're not going to define what is absolutely critical to any organization, but I think each organization needs to make their own decision. But typical things that may be measured at a very high level will be things like just pure procurement volumes, pricing, and quantities. One could look to savings, all right, looking at cost avoidance, which would be the actual pricing, purchase price paid, vis-a-vis the lowest price that's quoted in the marketplace, or could look at cost reduction, which is the actual purchase price paid, and compare that against the price that was paid previously for to see if prices are being reduced down. One could also look at other broader measures in terms of your overall procurement effectiveness, looking at things like the percentage of purchase transactions that are processed through e-commerce, the number of suppliers, or the percentage of service purchase that are handled via the purchasing department. Ultimately, it would be a combination of both quantitative and qualitative measures, looking at things like quality, delivery, costs, customer service, and innovation that will be important to you as an organization. Whilst the level of spend varies across sectors, in many organizations, at least 50% of all third-party spend is governed by contracts. And despite this, many organizations do not have an effective way of managing these contracts, with a significant focus placed on the initial contracting phase and little emphasis on monitoring performance, supporting continuous improvement, and driving synergistic values from the relationship. Analysis done by our colleagues in Capital Procurement Solutions shows that without rigorous contract management, the 75% of the savings offered through new contract arrangements can disappear within 18 months. So with limited resources available, how does one ensure that the highest level return is made to the contracting authority with the lowest costs and a mitigation of risks, but takes account of the fact that benefits ideally should accrue to both parties? As outlined previously, segmentation should be used to categorize suppliers that would rank suppliers from tactical to strategic partnerships and therefore would benefit from ongoing executive engagement. Effective contract management should are firmly embedded within the procurement cycle. It starts at the same time as the development of the sourcing strategy, with consideration of the type of supplier relationship and the subsequent contract that's best aligned to the overall organization's objectives. During the sourcing exercise itself, organizations should be prepared for ongoing management of the contract by taking care of the administrative tasks associated with contract management. Post-sourcing, contract management is the process responsible for ensuring KPIs are captured and monitored, and for tracking and using supplier feedback and the engagement activities in order to drive continuous improvement. Organizations that are most effective in managing their contracts have a number of other things in common. They would include having a single source of the truth with all contracts captured and stored centrally to create consistency and to facilitate knowledge sharing from their commencement. Named contract managers are in place who have the capacity and capability to effectively oversee the process. There are clear procedures in place to support the contract managers, capturing feedback from service users to monitor suppliers' performance. The terms and conditions of the contract are understood and aligned to operational needs, and there's evidence of supplier engagement and continuous improvement. So from a strategic point of view, having established through a review of spend what it is you're likely to require, and having established who your key suppliers are and the contractual position with these vendors, what tactical and transactional process enhancements should be deployed to transform the end-to-end process and deliver tangible benefits. The key building block for modern e-procurement platform, the key building block for this is a modern e-procurement platform. This will streamline the procure-to-pay process and give organizations the right tools to drive excellence and control spending without adding any significant administrative burden to the organization. Paper-based transaction processing slows down an organization's ability to get the information into its ERP or finance system. A simple thing, like if there's no PO number on an invoice, leads to further delays and costs, as the finance team will need to identify the originator, and then the invoice will have to be manually coded, matched, and approved. Automation of the procure-to-pay process can ensure that from the requisition creation through to the payment of the supplier, that only minimal data input is required at most stages. Approval activity at all stages are managed via workflows that link to your corporate email systems, and all interactions with your supply chain can become digital. We can use cost reductions through efficient processing, reduced delays, and elimination of errors. At its most basic level, and where implemented, electronic scanning handles income paper, fax, and PDFs, and can create an attached image of the original invoice linked to the electronic ERP transaction to assist in matching and approval processing. When deployed in conjunction with octa-character regions, the software can automatically capture details such as the company name, invoice number, due dates, and line item details to register invoices on the system for further processing. Many ERP systems today also provide automation in relation to invoices that are received via EDI, XML, or other formats which can be captured automatically and processed straight through for payment. While this is of great benefit for speeding up invoice processing, the next stage of advancement in a fully connected supply chain is where suppliers and customers can exchange information digitally via their systems. In these circumstances, an approved requisition can become a request for quotation when issued to the supplier. The corresponding quotation sent to the customer can be flipped to create a purchase order, which when transmitted to the supplier can in turn use the information provided to create a customer order. When the goods have been delivered, the customer invoices generated by the supplier can be transmitted to the customer to become the purchase order, and the only person who did any significant data entry, which may be limited to selecting from a catalogue, was the original requisitioner. Time saved for all parties, errors eliminated, and shorter processing time. Providing suppliers with portal access to your ERP system also drives efficiencies, allowing them to readily connect to exchange transactions such as quotes, orders, or invoices, but also to see the underlying accounting transactions, the status, and when they're likely to be paid. This reduces the burden on your accounts payable staff, who would normally have to field queries of this nature. Capturing documents electronically at the start of a process and having the ability to automatically capture invoice details can result in a 300% improvement in P2P processing times compared with manual entry. PEPL, which is the Pan-European Public Procurement Online, is an EU-sponsored initiative that began in 2008, and in simple terms, it offers a standardized network connection for e-commerce. While PEPL is not a platform per se, it is a set of technical specifications and standards that can be implemented in most clients' existing ERP solutions, allowing them to connect and exchange services and allow them to have interoperability, exchanging e-commerce documents with disparate systems across Europe and now both the US and Canada. Today, this is used to exchange standard-based electronic documents, including e-orders, e-advanced shipping notes, e-invoices, and e-catalogs. Governments across Europe have adopted PEPL to create efficiencies and reduce costs, and all countries are now on a countdown to compliance. E-invoicing is now mandatory in countries such as Sweden and Denmark, and from this year in both the Netherlands and Belgium. Here in Ireland, a timetable has been agreed that will see the adoption of PEPL-based processing for all central government by the 18th of April 2019, with local government and public sector bodies following the following year. In England, the NHS have been driving the adoption of PEPL. This began in 2016 as part of the NHS e-procurement strategy, and when it's fully deployed in 2020, the NHS aim to save approximately 1.5 billion per year with this step. To give you an idea of the impact of this technology it has reduced the approval processing time from 14 days to 3, and has halved the time it takes to pay suppliers. Indirect spend within an organization varies from perhaps 20% in private commercial enterprise to up to 100% in public sector bodies. This spend might include a wide variety of services, things such as catering costs, utility bills, professional fees, or advertising. For many organizations, other than for capital projects, much of this traditionally has been non-PO based, meaning that budget approvals, governance sign-off are likely to happen retrospectively, with the central finance team sometimes unaware of commitments that have been made to vendors until such time as the invoice materializes, leading to delays in processing these invoices. Automation of the procurement process enables companies to control who within the organization can buy certain items. It can check in real time if a budget is available within the requisitioner's cost center. Based on rules, it can route the request for multi-level approval up the line and can ensure the company is buying from approved vendors and preferred catalog product listings or contracts. By being able to consolidate orders from multiple requisitioners, it can also ensure that the best value is being delivered to the organization. By combining this type of approach with clear messaging to suppliers that without a PO there will be no payment, it can certainly eliminate almost all maverick spending across an organization. From a governance point of view, by taking this approach, the organization can ensure that the appropriate approvals are granted before the order is issued. For public sector organizations who have additional responsibilities, the system can ensure that public sector procurement rules are being adhered to and that the necessary checks in relation to RCT and TCC are carried out. Separation of duties criteria can be embedded within the system to ensure that one individual cannot order, receipt, and pay for an item. Many organizations that I visit who as yet have not implemented fully optimized P2P platforms still have very elaborate, time-consuming processes that tie up senior executives improving invoices for payments. This is a waste, I believe, of their valuable time, as the horse is already bolted. Presumably, the supplier feels that they have an order, the goods and services have been supplied, and an invoice has been raised, and their expectation is that the customer will now pay. Wouldn't it be much better if the checks in relation to budget, authority, supplier and price were approved prior to the purchase order being issued to ensure that we're only buying what's required from the appropriate source, and in these circumstances, the only check that would be required before we'd make a payment was, did we receive the products we ordered, and is it being invoiced at the price we ordered at? Payment approval processing can be further enhanced by using auto-matching. Carried out electronically, algorithms are used to automatically match the invoice, the purchase order, and the goods receipt without human intervention. An 80% auto-match rate can be achieved where invoices go straight through for payment. This eliminates delays, it lowers invoice transaction costs, resulting in significant positive impact on the business. Additionally, this form of matching can quickly identify and flag exceptions such as price or quantity mismatches and automatically routes them to the correct person designated to deal with the approval, again reducing time taken to streamline the process. There are many various estimates floating around in relation to how much it costs to process a purchase order and to pay a supplier invoice. This can vary from as high as $428 down to typically 30 to 40 euros in a non-optimized process, and as low as perhaps 5 euros in a fully streamlined system. The lower cost values quoted here may well be considered to be fine if the value of the PO is high, but what about very low value transactions? Managing multiple low value transactions and suppliers is typically seen as to be a costly activity without the proper foundations and is perceived to deliver very little of value to the organization. Traditionally, organizations focus a great deal of effort on their strategic suppliers, but do not have a clear strategy for managing these types of engagements. Options for consideration as to how quickly derive additional value to your organization with regard to these types of interactions would be to leverage your P2P system to manage demand or consolidate demand. So rather than 10 orders going out every 2 weeks, you reduce it and you have 1 order a week. To standardize the requirements, rather than have multiple variants of uniforms or other components, you just standardize to a more restricted choice, but to still provide the facility. To look at the number of vendors you have and see is there an opportunity to consolidate and reduce the number of vendors you have. And increasingly today, many organizations are turning to payment cards. Payment cards are a type of a credit card, but are very restricted in terms of both the values that spend that can be put on those cards and the nature or type of transactions that could be spent on the card. So if you are in the maintenance business, you may wish to restrict cards to certain individuals to allow them to go to the local builder supply thing where they can buy a shovel and some sand and cement, but they wouldn't be able to go into a travel agency and book a flight to the Canaries. Widely deployed now and much used by many organizations with automated links between the payment processing element that's delivered by the retail bank integrated into the ERP applications. So to wrap up, I just want to make a couple of comments regarding, before I wrap up with a couple of comments regarding the future direction of P2P, I quickly wanted to review what we've outlined in the presentation earlier. To be strategic, you need to have a clear understanding of what you need to buy and when you're going to need it. Suppliers should be segmented to allow you to focus on those that can yield maximum value to your organization. Time and effort will be required to benchmark suppliers using scorecards to identify those that should be nurtured, and rigorous contract management will provide ongoing savings and innovation. The digitization of your end-to-end procure to pay from requisition to payments will drive efficiency, reduce errors, and significantly lower your costs. So what about the future direction of P2P? Well, just to take a simple measure, on a recent presentation from the Office of Government Procurement, they stated that greater than 90% of some 4 million invoices that are issued to the Irish public sector are still delivered by post. If we take simple maths at 10 euros each, that's a cost of £40 million per annum to process these. So I think the business case in circumstances like that are all too evident. So our belief would be that supply chains will continue to go digital. By taking a digital route, it offers lower costs, more choice, greater competition, greater momentum in the marketplace, shorter lead times. It facilitates increased collaboration and generates more competition. So generally speaking, I think it's a very positive thing and a positive thing for the marketplace, and there's huge opportunities in all organizations to increase that level of collaboration between them and their supply chain. Artificial intelligence and machine learning, they have the capacity to carry out complex instructions and automatically learn from it. This theoretically will reduce the need for people to be involved to process complex P2P transactions, and the self-learning capability can lead to continuous improvement. And finally, we spoke about the importance of data. Big data, which is something you quite often hear something about today, you know, is clearly there, and transaction processing systems have traditionally created lots of data but very little intelligence. The capability to handle and analyze both structured and unstructured data will allow organizations to make better informed decisions and improve buying, contracting, and payment outcomes. Many thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the presentation.
Okay, so Tiernan, thank you very much for the presentation. We're just going to answer some questions. Okay. So thank you, everybody, for the questions that you've submitted. We won't be able to get through them all today. We'll try and get through at least the first 2 or 3. The first one, a large number of initiatives have been outlined in your presentation. What would you feel would yield the biggest and most immediate return?
Yeah, I think the answer to this is very much dependent upon the scale of your operation and how advanced your existing supply chain system is. But for those that haven't got a system in place, certainly the introduction of a requisitioning and procurement purchase order processing system will provide immediate benefits in terms of controls, visibility of spend, separation of duties, and straight-through payment processing, and can yield tremendous and very immediate benefits to the organization.
Right. The next one, I think we've had this one in 2 different forms. What other enabling technologies exist that support the increased digitalization of the supply chain marketplace?
Okay, I think there's 2 areas I'm going to just focus on there. Really, one is the ability to create open marketplaces, all right? And, you know, rather than trying to create point-to-point connections between customers and suppliers, many organizations are now turning to open marketplaces and using technologies from organizations such as TradeShift and CloudTrade to speed up the adoption of e-commerce and reduce the barriers for participation. The other thing where organizations believe that they're getting tremendous benefit is looking at marketplace solutions to control spending by using externally managed catalogs. Externally managed catalogs give customers potential access to a much broader portfolio of product that might be available if they were to try and manage those things directly. And there's an increased adoption of that type of technology.
Right. Our organization currently uses the Integra solution, but are only using invoice entry and the invoice approval system. What should we do?
Well, the first thing I would say would be you need to talk to your account manager, and the account manager certainly would be more than happy, I'm sure, to take you through what options might be best for you. But I think I would refer back to my original question, and if you're not using a purchase order, a requisitioning and purchase order managing system, I think that would be the first place that I would go to that's going to yield some real benefits to you as an organization. It provides better control. It's a more proactive approach in terms of managing a whole host of your activities and rather retrospectively approving invoices when they've arrived. This is proactively managing the procurement focus before the purchase order has ever been issued.
Fantastic, thanks, Tiernan. And finally, I think we've got one last question that we'll answer online. As a financial director, I was surprised by your comments in relation to the removal of controls to invoice payment. Can you elaborate on this, please?
Yeah, I don't mean to be disingenuous and disrespectful of the role of finance directors, but, you know, we're not removing the controls in relation to invoice payment. We're just putting the controls in a different place. The reality of it is it would be our contention that those controls should be in place before the purchase order is raised. That gives the organization or the individual the authority then to go and engage with the marketplace, and the controls are in place to ensure that what is being bought is required by the organization. The vendor we're buying it from is an approved vendor. The contract we're buying from is an approved contract. The price we're buying it from is the optimum price. So we have all the ducks in the line there in terms of ensuring we're buying the right thing from the right place. So when we do make that procurement and those goods are delivered, really what we're saying, the only checks that are required are did we get what we ordered, and was it invoiced for us at the price which we ordered it at? And if those are correct, it would be our view we should just move it forward then for payment and straight through payment processing. No further checks are required. The other authorities were all granted prior to the order being placed.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tiernan. That's great. And if anybody would like any further information, please email us at ibsmarketing@capita.co.uk. Thank you very much for your time today.